I want to welcome everybody to our final Dream Job webinar of the 2024-2025 academic year. I'm Danny Rubin, the founder of Rubin. We provide curriculum for employability skills to school districts around the country, a lot of career and technical education programs. And I'm thrilled today to have two friends, two colleagues joining Domonique Benn and Kathy Park, who really covered two different sides of TV journalism and sort of have two different days, their schedules, covering the news in different ways. And I'm really excited to let them both share with all of you what they do in their jobs. Really appreciate both of your time today. What I'd like to do is let me start with Domonique. Give me like a 60-second kind of bio on your career and what you're doing today, and I'll ask the same of Kathy, and then we'll start to dig into the work you both do. Go ahead.
All right, sure. Good morning to you or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Domonique Benn. I am a native Floridian. I went to the University of Florida and graduated there in telecommunications news. Go Gators. We just won a
That's right.
championship.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Right after school. Yeah. So right after school, I took a producing job at WLOX in Biloxi, Mississippi. That is on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And I spent about a year and a half there. I did about a year producing and about 6 months as a one-man band reporter, which is doing everything, shooting your stuff, editing your stuff, and going out for the interviews. After that, I went to Augusta, Georgia for about 7 years. And then I met Dan when I went to a WTKR in Norfolk, Virginia. And then I have been here at KSLA in Shreveport, Louisiana. Initially, I started as their evening anchor, but then started having babies and wanted to move to the morning. And now I have time to be at home with my family. I've been here for about 14 years now. And it's just been a ride. It's ever changing. The journalism industry. We were just talking about old school appointment journalism, where you sit in front of the television, and how it's evolving and changing into the digital realm. And so I'm trying to get up to speed on all of that, because once you master Facebook and everything, there's TikTok and there's everything else, and people are getting their news that way. So it's an ever-changing industry for me. I'm proud that I'm a part of this industry, and just looking forward to what the future holds.
Thank you. And we'll dig into that, especially the old school, the new school, and
Yeah.
how it all works at the end of the news cycle. Kathy, again, thank you for being here. Tell us your journey through local news now to the network. I'm just so thrilled when I see you on. I'm like, there she is. I'm sure you hear that a lot the last few years from people, but tell us your path through TV news.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, similar to Dominique's journey. And we've kind of like crisscrossed the country. But I'm a Maryland native, and I went to the University of Maryland and majored in journalism. And eventually, Danny and I crossed paths. And from J school, I was fortunate enough to start working right after graduation. So I actually got a job in the Tri-Cities market. So if you've heard of Bristol, Tennessee, if you're a NASCAR fan, that's where I was working. So it was kind of a bit of a culture shock from someone who grew up in the DC metro area to come to Appalachia. But that was my first job, and I was actually hired, now that I think back, as a reporter and a producer. But I was more excited to be out in the field, just interviewing folks, and just every day was kind of an adventure for me. So I was able to quickly pivot to just a reporting position at the station there as WCYB. It's called the Tri-Cities Market, a very small community. But I was able to move again, and was able to move back to the DC area pretty quickly. So working, reporting in my hometown was kind of a dream so early in my career. So I was working at WJLA and News Channel 8. Started off as a reporter, but then eventually made it to weekend morning anchor. So I was there in that market for 6 years. And then, I kind of got the itch again to see what else was out there. And California and the West Coast was always something that intrigued me. And then there was an opportunity in Sacramento, California. So from one capital to the next, was able to make that move out west. And also another culture shock for an East Coaster because, the weather is simply amazing. You just go outside, you just don't even have to worry about what you're going to wear for the day because it's sunny and just wonderful. So I love that. But I just remember covering my first wildfire, which is not something I knew. First of all, I didn't know what the heck a wildfire was growing up on the East Coast. We just didn't have those. So I was literally thrown into the fire covering that on the West Coast and other natural disasters and all that jazz. So I was in Sacramento. I was hired as a reporter and a weekend evening anchor, so I always had that hybrid role. And I was there for 4 years, and that was an NBC affiliate, KCRA, and that I want to say was kind of integral in shaping me to be a network correspondent because it was a really strong station. I was surrounded by really great producers, managers, other colleagues who I just felt like they shaped me to be a correspondent. That was something kind of I was looking for as a next jump. And then I was able to kind of put feelers out with the help of an agent and had some interviews at networks in New York. And it's always been a dream of mine to work for the Today Show and at NBC and to work at 30 Rock and all the stars literally just kind of
Incredible.
aligned. Yeah. And
Incredible.
I've just been so blessed and fortunate to have that opportunity now more than 6 years ago, believe it or not. I started in August of 2018, and here we are
Wow.
6 years later. So it's been a while. So I was in New York as like a fresh national correspondent working out of 30 Rock. And, if you guys have visited New York, it's where the iconic Christmas tree is lit, the ice skating rink. So I felt like every time I walked in there, it was a little piece of history, right? That I was able to soak in. And then after the first year, COVID hit. So that changed the whole trajectory of my experience in New York because everyone fled the city. I was kind of in the heart of the pandemic and covering everything COVID related from, the field hospitals and just a lot of tough news. So from there, that was 2 years of covering COVID pretty much. And then I was telling Danny briefly, I got married. My husband and I, or now he was my fiance at the time, he was living in Tennessee. I was living in New York during the pandemic. We got married. NBC allowed me to relocate, which, a lot of people, they did work from home, even at the network level because of COVID. So I was able to relocate to Knoxville, Tennessee, and that's where I am today. And I cover a little bit of everything, a lot of breaking news, unfortunately, a lot of tragedies and disasters, but tomorrow I'm heading to Dollywood to interview Dolly Parton. So that's, one of the perks of the job as well.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's at least a happy story. They give you a happy one for a change.
Yeah.
I thank you for sharing that your career journey, both of yours. I mean, you're both such top-notch professionals. And again, I love watching both of your careers. And I stepped out of the business doing different things, but I know what it is to be in front of that camera. And so let's start there actually, because this is like a late night show. I got a clip. We're pulling clips. Okay. We're going to watch a clip. So first, Domonique, you sent me your reel and I just wanted to share a quick clip. I want the students to see both of our guests on camera doing their job. And then I want you both to tell us what's going on in front of the camera, behind the camera. Help us understand the environment that you're working in, doing live television. So let me first play a few seconds of Domonique from her reel.
And parents, listen up. We've learned of another back to school giveaway with thousands of backpacks full of supplies to hand out. The backpack giveaway is this Sunday at Winfield Funeral Home in Shreveport. Thursday, along with the nonprofits, the Shreveport Volunteer Network and Moms on a Mission, they went shopping for all of those school supplies to pack those backpacks. It was a big night for Bossier Parish.
So I'll show that. That's from Domonique sharing an event in her local community. And then I also want to share. Yeah, you're right, Kathy. There's a lot of heavy stuff that you cover. I chose a winter storm. Okay. And so let's listen in. She's doing this on NBC Nightly News. Raise your hand, students or teachers, if you've seen that show, NBC Nightly News. This is the national broadcast.
Lester, good evening to you. Residents tell us that the storm blew through in a matter of seconds. And in that short amount of time, you can see the damage left behind. This home completely torn apart, and part of this home ended up right in the pool.
Tonight, extreme weather striking all corners of the country. A powerful line of storms unleashing hurricane-force winds in the Carolinas.
This is insane.
And whiteout conditions in the Midwest, grounding flights making a mess on the roads.
I'll pause it there for the sake of time, but I wanted you both to see, I wanted the students to see where and how our guests work. And while we get into the conversation now, I would ask that the teachers and students begin to go to the Q&A along the bottom of Zoom and start to share. We already have a question, actually, because one of our teachers comes a lot and she knows, but start sharing your questions with our guests. Put them in the Q&A and I will go through them shortly. Let me start with Domonique. So we're watching you on your set at the TV station, standing next to a TV. But what's going on there? You're talking and then there's video on top of you. Who's in front of you? You're looking at the camera. What's going on in your environment? Is somebody in your ear talking to you? Help us understand what's happening doing live anchor reporting or, anchoring the news.
Well, I'm going to take you back to when we were both at WTKR, when we had a studio full of people that were behind the cameras that rolled the teleprompter, and we had people in there with us. That has since changed, and we have gone pretty much robotic and digital. And so at the time, nobody was in there with me. I do have an earpiece called an IFB that we can hear the direction of our directors, our producers, or anybody that needs to get conversation to us. That morning I was alone, so I didn't have a co-anchor. That's why I was in there by myself. Someone from weather is over in the weather center as well. And basically, times have changed over the past, I guess, 30 or 40 years, where an anchor is just behind the desk. I mean, we move, and we need to move from behind the desk. We need to be out there telling the stories. I was standing next to one of the big monitors in our studio, and we were just telling the story of back to school. That's called a VOSOT, that was a VO. We didn't have a VOSOT on that one, but unless you stopped it early. But just basically the VO is video.
And what is SOT? What is SOT? Is that's sound on tape?
Sound on tape. I'm sorry.
And that's like the sound bite when you hear somebody talking in the video.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And also, Domonique, I have a quick question. What is for the students, what is a teleprompter?
Yes. So that is our means of when we're looking into the camera, there's actually some type of magical mirror. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it allows the words to come up on the screen. You don't see it, but I do. And we're able to read, and that's the teleprompter. Back in the day when you and I were reporting and anchoring, someone ran that teleprompter with like a little
or a pedal or their hand. Yeah.
Right. And now I think most stations across the country, whether you're in a small market or a big market, they're using you as the anchor, you're running your own teleprompter. So I have a handheld teleprompter that I run myself. I used to have a foot pedal. It just depends on whatever station chooses to do foot pedal.
Okay.
So there are not a lot of teleprompter operators, I imagine, and Kathy can probably talk to that. In the bigger markets, I'm sure that they do have teleprompters running those for those.
Well, but actually that brings up a question. So Kathy, we watched they took you live on location on NBC Nightly News. So you don't have a teleprompter out there. Do you rehearse the line? Do you have some things you want to make sure you say? How do you prepare to do what's called a live shot or go live in news? What was going on in that particular story? How do you prepare when the camera's on and you're on national television?
Yeah. I wish I had a prompter, especially when you're on very little sleep, because our schedules are a little bonkers, because at NBC News and probably all the networks now, we have so many different platforms that we need to contribute to. So my day could typically start 4 or 3 a.m. in the morning. I do Today's Show, a live shot for Today's Show. And then we have MSNBC in between. And then we have News Now, or streaming platform. And then some of our affiliates carry it throughout the day. And then we got to start gathering our elements for a nightly news story, which you just watched there. So our day can start at 4 a.m. and it doesn't end until 8 p.m. And then we got to drive to wherever. So in any case, that's just kind of a snapshot. But you're right. I don't have a prompter out in the field. And that was a tornado. So tornado damage behind me. But it's not an easy task. But unfortunately, I have, the resources. I have a producer with me out in the field oftentimes. I have a cameraman and audio. And then we have producers who are in one of our bureaus, whether it be New York, Miami, or Los Angeles, who they're producers, and there's a team out there as well who they catch all of our elements. So whatever we shoot out in the field, we send it back to New York or wherever the producing team is putting the story together. And it really is a team effort. So we're gathering, I'm writing the script, and someone, like I keep referring back to New York, oftentimes it is New York, someone in New York is editing the story together to see, the story that you ended up, just a clip of it, but that's what comes together at the end of the day. And it's a full day of gathering elements. And at the network level, obviously we have a national audience. So you saw clippets of different extreme weather, wild weather events happening all across the country. So we fold all of that in, and then we insert the elements that we gather just to kind of just show the scope of how bad this weather system was. Because oftentimes they have us covering weather because it impacts millions of people across the country. It has a wide, reach, whether it be snow, tornadoes, often sometimes now because of weather being so just crazy and unpredictable. One system can spawn all of that. So that was just kind of a snapshot of how we put that together.
Thank you. It's whether it's local news or national, weather drives the bus.
Yeah.
And so many times we have a lot of questions now in the chat as we've been talking. And I want to start with one, and it says it's from an anonymous person. I'd love to share the credit if it's you, but let's go back to when you were both first getting in the business or exploring the business. How would students start their journey? High school students, can you intern at a TV station in high school? Can you shadow? Let me start with Kathy on this first, and Domonique, you can sort of piggyback. Like, what opportunities, if you were back in high school and you were thinking about this field, what would you recommend students do?
Yeah. Looking back at my high school experience, which was many, many years ago, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I got involved with not local, but the newspaper within the high school. We had a group that we could do that, and basically we went to publication like every other month or something like that. So I was able to kind of hone in my writing skills that way. We also had a student run kind of like a morning announcement type of thing. So I don't know if your school offers something like that, but if you're interested, just curious about how this works, that's a great place to start because it kind of gets you out of your shell, especially because I think the first thing, especially if you want to be in front of the camera, is to kind of get comfortable staring at a black hole and just kind of staring at the camera in front of you. I think a lot of people ask me a lot of questions that I get asked from people just getting started in the business, like how do you stay, so poised and comfortable in front of the camera? And I was, my answer is I wasn't always like that. It's like repetition and just doing it over and over and over again and just having that live element. You just kind of just in your bones now. So it just becomes more natural, right? So I would start there. So if you're interested in writing, try to get, involved in the newspaper, yearbook, the TV station that you have there. And I would, it doesn't even hurt to ask the local news station, hey, do you have internship opportunities for me? I know it is high school, but you'd be surprised at who actually reaches back out. It doesn't hurt to ask.
Domonique, I'll give you a chance to answer on top of that. Like, since you're in a local market, how can students get involved, and what do students do at your station?
Okay, sure. I'll echo Kathy on how my career began in high school.
Oh yeah, yes, that too. Sure.
First, we had a morning announcement called AM Pause. And so I was involved in that. And like Kathy says, it gives you the repetition. It gives you the ability to feel comfortable in front of a camera and read those announcements and try to read them without tripping up and things like that. And then when you go to college, I say definitely start interning in college. as soon as you get to colleges, if that's what you want to do, I would start right then. Don't wait till your senior year because you're already behind, right? Because everybody is trying to, it was so competitive back then, and I still believe it is now. I would start to intern. Here at KSLA, we allow students to come in and shadow if they're in high school. There's really not an internship application that they can do. We only do those for those that are in college because they're with us pretty much every day and they receive credit for it. But we do allow high schoolers to come in every now and then. They can sit from beginning to end, from the editorial meeting to a newscast. They can participate. They can watch us write, and they can just see if this is for them. Yeah.
So that's great. And I think what I want to speak to on top of that is when the students are with you, what kinds of communication skills do you want to see from the students? Not just their behavior as, shadowing, but also to show that they understand the chops, the communication skills that it takes to work in this field. Do they need to be good at writing? Do they need to be good listeners? Good with follow-up questions? What do you want to see? I'll ask Domonique first, then Kathy. What do you think are the best communication skills to hone when you're younger that will play out in this job? Domonique, what do you want to see from a student who's shadowing you?
Somebody that's inquisitive, somebody that's going to dig and find out even farther. There's always something more to the story, right, than just the layer. We had someone, I can't remember the story exactly. What was it? It was last week. There was a gentleman, I believe it was an accident, a really, really bad accident, where it made national news. It wasn't an accident. It was one of our city buses, and it was the new CNG buses, and the system did not work to alert them that the fire that happened in the engine moved to the CNG tube. And luckily, somebody was behind them and saw the fire just in the back and pulled up to the driver and said, "Hey, move over, move over." And that bus driver was able to get everybody off of that bus. And within maybe 2 to 3 minutes, that bus exploded. And so someone wrote our newsroom and said, "Hey, my husband and I, we were the drivers behind the bus, and we wanted to know if the bus driver is okay. We hope that everybody got off," because they didn't know that the bus exploded. They just kept going after they alerted her to move over. And so being inquisitive, and this is what we try to teach some of our journalists, our new journalists that are coming in, because one journalist that was pretty new in the field, maybe 2 years, she replied, she says, "Everybody's okay. Here's the story. But let's talk to the people who saw this. Let's talk to the drivers who alerted."
On the other angle.
Yes, let's dig a little bit deeper, because had that driver not pulled up to that bus driver and said, "Move over," we could be talking about a very, very different story here.
Yep.
And possibly more fatalities. There were no injuries. So being
Okay.
inquisitive and being passionate.
Thank you. And Kathy, what would you say? Like, what are you glad you worked on in high school, middle school, college that you applied today? Is it the writing? Is it the speaking? Is it the storytelling? What are you glad you spent time working on?
Yeah, I mean, I became a journalist because I enjoy the storytelling, the art of storytelling, right? And I think a big component of that is being a very good listener. I think if you're able to really connect with whoever you're speaking with, you're able to make your story a little bit more unique, because you'll remember those little details, the emotions. But Domonique, you hit it. I mean, being inquisitive, being curious, and especially nowadays, you have so much access to information. I mean, I would assume most of you have access to, your computers and your phones, and the news is coming at you at all sorts of angles, but stay plugged in. I mean, especially if you want to become a journalist, I think it's important to stay on top of current events. So turn on the local news. Also watch the national news if you have time to do so. So be able to kind of consume news from different angles, whether it be TV, go to NewYorkTimes.com, Washington Post. It doesn't hurt to start early and kind of hone those skills, and just being able to be well read and know what's happening in your community, but also across the country and around the world.
One thing we talk about when we talk to all kinds of people in these webinars, welders, sports agents, lawyers, nurses, and one thing that I always impress upon students is the ability to ask follow-up questions, which is something I learned in journalism and what you two do in your jobs. but it's even more to the point in journalism where you're interviewing somebody and you want to know more. Domonique, tell me the value of when you say digging. Someone gives you an answer and you're almost like a toddler, like, why? Why?
Right,
Why? You keep getting down to that real truth at the
right.
center of it all. Why is asking follow-up questions so important, not just in your job, but just as a way of going about the world?
I think that's because what the viewer wants to know, it's being inquisitive, and what your follow-up question is likely what the viewer wants to know, right? So many times when you're growing up and you're asking so many questions, somebody may say, well, quit asking all of those questions or you're being nosy. But actually this is now what we get to do in order to find answers, right?
That's good.
In order to find answers, and sometimes follow-up questions lead to other stories.
That's right. Kathy, how do you employ that mindset of like, either the first answer is not the last answer? I'm going to have to probe, look at different angles. How do you employ that mindset in your job?
Yeah, oftentimes, I mean, we cover a lot of press conferences, right, with officials, elected officials, and people of power, and they have talking points. And when they know they have a national audience and network cameras pointing at them, they have an agenda, and they're going to say what they want to say. But then when you get to the Q&A, you have us just kind of jumping on them and following up with good questions, because you really want to sometimes hold them accountable. Sometimes they withhold a lot of information because it might be early on in the investigation. But if you're able to be persistent, you'd be surprised at what they do eventually reveal, and that ultimately sometimes becomes the headline, the real story. So
That's
that's
right.
from my experience. It's just the Q&A with us sometimes can
Well,
be
like, yeah, Dominique said the same. It's like the answer could become the story,
right.
depending on but it's also been how you ask it,
Correct.
right? Your question elicits the response. We're heading up close to 12:30 Eastern. We'll have a couple more questions here and we'll start to wrap. Our guests today have busy schedules and we appreciate, in fact, Dominique has to go anchor the noon show in her market. She'll be on TV in about half an hour. So we'll get her out of here. But okay, question from Jacqueline Burdett and her students in Covington Middle School. Kathy, how will you prepare to interview Dolly Parton? How are you preparing to talk to the great,
I
the
know.
legendary Dolly Parton?
That's a great question. I've been doing that, for a couple days now. Fortunately, like I said, I work for NBC News, so I've been able to, our producers have been able to dig up some good archives of past interviews with Dolly Parton. And, there's a bit of it, it's a bit more streamlined because it's the 40th anniversary of Dollywood.
I was going
So,
to say, what's the angle
yeah,
here? What's the
that's,
story? Okay,
that's
Dollywood's 40th.
correct. So,
Okay.
obviously I can ask Dolly a million questions, right? I mean, she's a icon. She's a national treasure, but it's going to be a little bit more streamlined as to the celebration of the 40th anniversary because she started, in 1986. It basically went through different ownership several times. And then it's funny because I look back at one of the interviews. She said she went to Hollywood because she was this big star. And she's like, wouldn't it be nice to see the H turn into a D and call it Dollywood? And like,
Incredible.
I know. So there's all
What a
these
legend.
I know. So she has these great moments and great interviews.
Right.
So I'm peeling back the layers a little bit by going back at some of the old interviews that she did on the Today Show and then kind of looking back, but also looking ahead and just kind of, she has deep ties to the Smoky Mountains. I mean, she grew up poor in the mountains. So just learning about her history. So it's about her personal life, how far she's come, also looking at all those old interviews that she's done in the past, and then just reading up about the park and just its history.
Super cool. And Dominique, thinking back on your career, I know you've done a million stories and talked to a million people. Who are some of the more notable people you've interviewed, either famous or infamous or interesting? Who pops up in your mind?
I would say probably James Brown.
Good one.
He's from Augusta, Georgia, and like Dolly, he grew up poor, and quit school at a very early age, and really Augusta never gave him his due respect, right? Because everyone else in the whole entire world did. Finally, they did, and they realized the jewel that they had, and they did a statue unveiling. And I asked to ride in the limo with him to the statue unveiling, and he said, sure. And so he called me Monique. Come on, Monique. And so we rode, we rode, and I tell you, I thought we were going straight to the statue unveiling, and he went everywhere. He had his little boy, the last child that was born. He was like 3. He had to stop and get him chicken. He had to stop at the cemetery, and he wanted to show me where his parents were buried, who were very instrumental in his life. And you know, maybe 2 months after that, I interviewed him. He passed away on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, and I left a week after that, coming to Norfolk. So I'd say just the inspiration, regardless of who he was. Some people, you know, wanted to bring up a lot of the bad things over his life, and you know, the drugs, and he talked about that. But he was who he was, and he was sampled a lot, and he was an inspiration to many celebrities that popped up at his funeral. Michael Jackson was at his funeral, so
Say no
Hammer was
more.
at his funeral.
Say
Yeah,
no more. If the King of Pop is at your funeral, I think that speaks for
yeah.
everything. As we wrap up, I want to give both of you a chance to share with the students, looking at your careers, which have both been incredible careers, but you're still in the middle of. You're not done. But here, Dominique, you go first. What's your sort of parting remark for students? Why they should get into the industry, stay in the business? Why do you still find meaning in the work that you do?
Yeah, I think what Kathy says is, you know, the accountability, holding the leaders and leadership in whatever city that you're in, whether you are a reporter and anchor, whether you're local or national, is holding people accountable and making an impact for the viewers where you are. Stay hungry, you know, stay ready. You don't have to get ready. Like Kathy said, you know, she wanted to get to where she was in New York at NBC, and she was ready, and she did what she had to do. And so do what you have to do, put in the work, and I promise it will pay off if you put in the work.
Lovely. And Kathy, what would you say to the students? Why should they get in the business and like you never know where it might take you. What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's the beauty of this business because I feel like everyone has their own journey, their own path. I mean, people that I went to journalism school with, they've all kind of done some incredible things with their careers in news that they decided to stick with it. Yes, be passionate. I think if this is what you want to do, go in it 100%. Put in the work, put in the hard work. Also, I hear this often, but you know, your reputation often precedes itself. Be good to people because you'd be surprised. You know,
Small world.
it is. It's a very small world that, you know,
In
that
every industry.
yes. So it's important to just lean into kindness. But also, you know, it's a tough, I'm gonna, you know, I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is a tough business because you will be working a lot of long hours. I mean, it doesn't get any easier because I'm still working holidays, I'm still working weekends. So be prepared to make those sacrifices. But I think it's so important to keep this industry alive because, like as I mentioned earlier, there's so many different ways to consume news. Misinformation is a real thing, and I think it's so important to build that foundation, especially at your age. You know, don't lose sight of that because it's so important. You know what we do, I think, because we can decipher fact from fiction. People on social media, on TikTok, I don't know. I'll keep my mouth shut, but that's kind of what we're dealing with these days. So I think it's so important to, you know, keep true to the integrity of this business.
Appreciate that.
Nice.
Kathy, can you give me a little national sign off like live in Knoxville? Lester, back to you. Give me a little flavor.
Okay. I'm Kathy Park reporting live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Lester or Danny, back to you.
Thank you. I had to indulge me there. I think it's just so great. You get to say that kind of thing, and it's great to see you say it. So, students, can I see some hands, teachers, some hands up in Zoom if you appreciated this conversation? I sure hope you did, because these are some premier guests that we bring to you on our Dream Job series. Thank you, Dominique, Kathy, so much. Thank you, Bethany, for your sign language services. Students, this is our last interview of the academic year. We'll pick it up again in the fall with a new slate of guests. We'll figure out who they are when we get there. But thank you for being with us throughout the year. everybody who watches on our YouTube channel, with a lot of classes watch on recording because of their schedules. So thank you all. We appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing you again next school year. Again, thank you both. Good luck with the rest of your day and good luck with Dolly tomorrow.
Thank you.
Talk
Thanks.
soon.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Danny,
it.
and good luck to all of the
Day.
students.